Chances are, if you live in a small Midwestern town, nothing much ever happens. But in a few towns of southern Illinois and western Indiana, runs a little railway. A railway of blue with an all-Alco roster, until later. But as the years went on, the railroad still kept its charm, known as the Kankakee, Beaverville, and Southern Railway, or KB&S for short. And the railroad once held two unique locomotives that were a pop of red and a railroad of blue. This is the story of KB&S 308 and 309. June of 1955, the time 308 came into existence. Built as your typical RS3 for switching and light freight duties. Coming to work for the Green Bay and Western as their 308 in gray and red. In 1973, Green Bay Western started a rebuild program for their RS3s, which would receive 251 engines with 2,000 horsepower and a redesigned low short cab for better visibility. These rebuilds would be designated the RS-20 class. This was applied to engines 305, 306, 307, and 308, making them a unique four-of-a-kind on the Green Bay Western. However, these rebuilt designs could very well be seen elsewhere. These rebuilds would have their gray and red scheme phased out with a solid red scheme, complete with Green Bay Western lettering. September of 1956, 309 came into the picture. Built as an RS-11 with a high hood and then painted in a gray and red livery about this time. Between July and August of 1964, 309 would be built with a low hood and into their gray and red livery, although would gain the full red livery by 1969. Since 309 was the only RS-11 on the roster, and to get this cab treatment, it's made the engine a unique one-of-a-kind. Aesthetically, it kinda looks like a C420, but it's still an RS-11, just rebuilt. In 1986, 309 would gain a name, which was very uncommon on American locomotives. It would be named H. Weldon McGee, after the president of the Green Bay Western who served from 1962 to 1978. In 1993, Itel Rail Corporation, which had owned the Green Bay Western since 1978, had sold both the Green Bay Western and the Fox River Valley Railroad to Wisconsin Central for $62.2 million. Now, I don't dislike the Wisconsin Central, but it was clear that the WC was one of those railroads that was fully in it for the profits. So the first thing they did with the Green Bay Western was to retire all of the Alcos and cabooses, with the Alcos that remained being used only in emergencies. Many were sold off to other railroads, and this is where 308 and 309 came to play. Before I explain 308 and 309's stance, it's important for me to explain the railroad's history that they went to. In 1977, the newly formed Conrail wanted to abandon 25 miles of track between Kankakee and Sheldon, Illinois. The line was instead purchased by a local businessman called Fay Orr, and formed the Kankakee, Beaverville, and Southern Railway. As other local Class 1s were being corrupted with greed and downsizing their lines, the KB&S took them on. By 1995, the railroad had more than 150 miles of track, and it was clear they needed more motive power. In January of 1995, the KB&S purchased 308 and 309 from Wisconsin Central and put them to work as soon as the 309 received a new set of traction motors. 308 arrived with its Green Bay Western paint stenciled out with WC on the cab. 309 contained its original Green Bay Western colors, lettering, and name, and both would continue to work onto the KB&S further into the decade. By the late 1990s, the Alcos on the KB&S had started their decline. With a couple of their fleet out of service already, the railroad leased a handful of Jeeps from nearby shorelines to cover demand, with all the Alcos that remained still smoking away as usual. By April of 1998, 308 and 309 got an upgrade. Both had their former railroad's logos and names painted out and were given blue over their former owner's lettering and received KB&S on the sides and on the cab nose and long hood. 1998 was such a good year to film the KB&S. But unfortunately, on March 11th, 1999, tragedy struck. 309 was being driven a bit too fast by the engineer when the front flange of the wheel came off the track at a grade crossing due to severe ice buildup in the rails. 309 derailed on a small trestle and rolled over where a tree flung through the radiator while turning over. The engineer was fired for this. The KB&S decided not to repair 309 and sat the engine in their deadline in Arcus, Illinois, as a source of spare parts. 308 continued service on the KB&S, often being paired up with the other blue RS-11s that were remaining, and 324, a former Southern Pacific RS-11 rebuild from the California Western. But it was clear by early 2004, only two Alcos were in operable condition. So the KB&S purchased 6 GP40s from National Railway Equipment. And since the GP40s had been deturbocharged, they were basically reclassified as rebuilt GP38s. This was the year the Alcos on the KB&S died for good. And all the Alcos, including the 308, were set aside in the deadline in Arcus. Then, redemption came. A man by the name of Gary Ballon, a member of the Monticello Railway Museum in Illinois, purchased the 308 from KB&S in 2005. The engine was in operable condition, and over the years was repainted out of its KB&S lettering into a solid red scheme. The owner plans to repaint 308 in Green Bay Western's gray and red livery. This would be inaccurate since the RS-20s on the Green Bay Western never exactly wore the gray and red, just the solid red. But other than that, 308 still runs and is occasionally fired up running around the property of the museum. 309 may be gone, and it's an absolute shame it is, but 308 still exists, and it's a very overlooked part of the museum. But that's public opinion for you. They'd rather see a shiny steam engine and streamliners than a general purpose switcher. But still, it's very wonderful to see how this unique kind of rebuild got a second chance.